Hello all, a great afternoon to all of you. I welcome all of you to our special series that is our Prelims Masterclass 2025 and where we are dealing with 100 most important or the top most current affairs that are extremely important for the upcoming Prelims examination 2025. Okay, so if you are actually watching this particular video for the first time, I would like to introduce myself as Sureka Bhaskar and I'm dealing with Environment and Ecology series under the Prelims Masterclass for the upcoming examination. So, if you are, as I told you, watching this video for the first time, or you're the first timer, or you have begun your preparation, I would say that this is a one-stop, destination for you guys to actually get familiar with what kind of topics does the UPSC actually asks, and what are the topics that have some connect with the static topics, and how you can improvise on your clarity as well as presentation in your mains examination. Okay. Also, I would like to say that this is actually our 8th class. We have 2 more classes to finish up the series, and so far we have completed almost 70 to 75 most important topics, and in the remaining classes we'll actually complete the rest. Okay, so this happens to be the first slide of our class where I would take you through the significant number of topics which are of which are the high impacted areas, okay, that has a very high potential of appearing in your examination. So, if you look at this particular slide, I will tell you the topics that we've covered. We actually started with the topic of ecosystem. Okay. So, in the ecosystem, we had actually started with the forest ecosystem and dealt with the different initiatives that have been taken nationally as well as the global efforts in order to conserve the ecosystem. That actually includes the UN RED program as well as the Peace Forest Initiative. We had the international arrangement of forests, we had the wood certification schemes and so on, where we also discussed about the Rio conventions, that is the legally binding conventions, which were 3 in number, adopted at the Rio Earth Summit, that is in 1992, that is UNFCCC, UNCBD as well as UNCCD respectively. We saw when these conventions came into existence and when it was actually ratified by India. Okay. Moving forward, we also looked at the second ecosystem, that is the ocean ecosystem, where we discussed about the concept of high seas. We actually looked at the concept of high seas treaty and how important or relevant it is for India to sign as well as ratify the same. And moving forward, we also looked at the blue flag certification, whom it is actually, which are the beaches to whom it is actually awarded to. It is awarded by which organization, whether it is an NGO or whether it is a non-for-profit organization, all that we discussed over here. Moving forward, we went on to discuss the other types of ecosystem. And this is where we discussed the maximum topics, where we started with the mountain ecosystem. Okay, we saw the mountain partnership and what is actually the significance. And we move forward to discuss the wetland ecosystem and its conservation under the Ramsar sites. And then we also discussed what the mangroves ecosystem, and that is also called as the blue carbon storage ecosystem, when how is it actually significant in regulation of forest in terms of sequestering carbon dioxide, thereby reducing the effects of greenhouse gases in global warming and climate change. This is what we looked at in this particular topic. Also, we discussed about the concept of corals as well as coral reefs and how the world is actually going to face the 4th mass coral bleaching event. Okay, so we discussed about the types of corals, also the concept of artificial corals, which was actually introduced in Rameshwaram, okay, in Tamil Nadu, with Pamban Island, very important. And also we discussed about the concept of deep sea corals and how they are different from that of the shallow water corals, and what are all the characteristics of this particular ecosystem, because they're called as the rainforest, okay, of the oceans. Okay, so these are the articles we discussed under ecosystems. Now we move forward to discuss the second important topic, that is the environmental organization and bodies, where we actually discussed about the national as well as the international bodies. In the national bodies, we discussed about what the IMD, that is the Indian Meteorological Department, which celebrated 150 years since its inception. Moving forward, we also discussed about the National Green Tribunal as well as the Center Groundwater Board, which released the annual assessment report of 2024 with respect to the contamination of groundwater across different cities and districts in India. Okay. Then in the international organization, we of course discussed about the Global Environmental Facility, a funding mechanism to different conventions like the Minamata Convention, the Stockholm Convention, the UNFCCC, the UNCCD, CBD, etc. And also we discussed about the Wildlife Fund for Nature. Okay, so this is also very, very important. Then we moved forward to the third most important topic, that is climate change, where the first discussion of climate change was our mitigation and adaptation strategies, where we actually discussed what do you mean by mitigation, how it is different from that of adaptation. We saw different techniques that have been adopted by India. For example, India as well as the other countries or the global efforts. For example, we saw the CCUS, that is carbon capture, utilization and storage. We saw the CBAM, that is carbon border adjustment mechanism of the European Union. Also, the EU had come up with the EU Nature Restoration Plan. All these things we discussed, and also we discussed the importance of what? The carbon markets. And what is this carbon markets and how does it actually facilitate the selling and buying of carbon credits? So when did this carbon credit come into existence? When was it actually acknowledged? Was in the Kyoto Protocol of 1997. All this is very, very important. India ratified it, however, in 2002. Okay. So after discussing the mitigation as well as the adaptation, we moved towards the important convention or the conference of parties that actually took place with respect to UNFCCC as well as UNCCD. Okay, so we discussed about the COP29 that was actually recently held in Baku, and what were the takeaways for India? Well, was India in a position to sign the global methane pledge? Was it satisfied with the quantified goals, that is NCQG, that was actually come up by the developed countries? In the place of 1.3 trillion, we were actually promised only around $300 billion. Was India satisfied or not? And we also looked at the Paris Convention, how it came up with the common but differentiated responsibility as well as the nationally determined contributions, all that we discussed here. Then the next topic was the COP16, and COP16 to what? UNCCD, that is United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. And we saw what were all the takeaways from this particular meeting. Apart from this, we saw the global environmental facility that we already discussed, as well as the green credit program. Okay, and then we switched over to the fourth most important topic, that is biodiversity. So under biodiversity, we discussed concepts of tiger reserves and how important is the conservation of these big cats in India. What are all the different tiger reserves present across the country? Then the concept of biosphere reserves, which are internationally designated by UNESCO. And finally, we discussed about what? The eco-sensitive areas. And also as a continuation, we discussed about the UNCBD COP, that is Conference of Party 16, that was recently held. And with respect to that, we saw what were all the updated national action plan on biodiversity that India has actually given, and whether that was aligning with that of the Kunming Montreal Biodiversity Protocol or not, is what we actually saw. When was it adopted? COP15 in 2022 in Montreal. We actually saw the 30-30 targets of the Kunming Montreal Protocol as well. Okay. Then, as a part of conservation of biodiversity, we moved on to discuss about what the International Big Cat Alliance that India actually brought about in the year 2023 in order to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the 1973 established Project Tiger. Next, we moved on to discuss about the Tiger Conservation Coalition, where the NGOs from across the world came together. And then we discussed about the CITES, that is the Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species of Flora and Fauna. What are all the appendices? How many species are actually preserved there? All that we looked over here. So Appendix 1, 2 and 3, CITES and India, what is the relations, and the the species that are protected under CITES is covered under the legal framework of India, under which whether it has the WPA or it is conserved under the Export Import Trade Act, or whether it is under any other act is what we actually saw there, Customs Act, etc. Then we moved on to discuss about the integrated development of wildlife habitat, where we discussed about that this came in 2008 as a centrally sponsored scheme, where it aims to integrate different programs or the conservation programs such as the Project Tiger, the Project Elephant, as well as Project Dolphin. So after finishing this, we moved on to this particular topic of pollution. So we divided this pollution into three types. So one is actually the, so what to say, air pollution, where we discussed, sorry, okay, so air pollution, and then we discussed about soil pollution as well as water pollution. So under air pollution, we discussed three important topics. One is air of Anthropocene initiative, to discuss about the climate, discuss about the air pollution. So the next one, that is what is the quantum of air pollution, that was what was depicted by the researchers. Next, we discussed about the National Clean Air Program, okay, as well as India's stand in it. And then finally, we discussed on the concept of the ground level ozone, or it is also called as the tropospheric ozone, and how it is different from that of the stratospheric ozone, and how potent it is as a greenhouse gas when compared to that of the carbon dioxide. This also we discussed. Then we move forward to the soil pollution. There we discussed two important topics, that is one on salt affected soils. So what do you mean by salt affected soils, and because of this salt affected soils, what is the kind of impact it is going to have on the soil fertility, thereby resulting in the how it is affecting the productivity or the yield of the vegetation, is what we saw over here. Then we moved forward to look at the other topic, that is the concept of soil acidification. Okay, so we actually saw the acidification or the ionization process that is actually taking place, where the soils are having a pH of less than 7, in order to curb that, what were all the measures that we had to do, like mulching or application of gypsum and other technologically advanced methods, is what we saw over here. And then in water pollution, we discussed about what, the arsenic contamination of water, the nitrogen contamination, etc. And after that, we moved towards a totally, let me occupy this space, we actually moved to other types of pollution. And in other types of pollution, we discussed about the concept of light pollution and what was the observation by the World Atlas on light pollution. Then we moved towards the concept of what other kinds of pollution, like we had the global nitrous oxide budget 2024, that was actually there, and how potent is nitrous oxide when compared to that of carbon dioxide, we saw. Then we moved towards the nitrogen pollution. Then we saw the concept of methane pollution as well as mercury pollution. And finally, on the mercury pollution, we discussed about the Minamata Convention, where India ratified it 1 year or 2 years after its coming into force. And finally, we saw the pollution by persistent organic pollutants or the particles, which is also, one of it is the PFAS, that is polyfluoroalkyl substances. And for this only, we have the Stockholm Declaration that actually came into force, whether India signed it or not. So these were around 70 to 75 topics that we have actually covered in exclusive detail. Okay, so you will know how important this particular course is. Now in today's class, what we will deal with is this particular topic of waste management. Okay, do you understand? So we'll be discussing about waste management. So someone is asking me how many more classes for environment. There will be 2 more classes for environment. Okay, so today we'll be discussing about waste management, and we will cover few of the important terms in geography, important articles or topics from geography. And also we'll move forward on Monday with few more of geography topics, and we will see what were the key terms that were in news. And the key terms here, as I say, it actually includes terms like junk carbon credits, carbon colonialism, carbon farming, Humboldt enigma, all those things we will actually discuss. Okay, so the topics that we will start with today is actually the waste management. So under waste management, we have divided this into three. So the first one will be the plastic waste management. So here we'll discuss about what are plastic waste and what is the impact or the amount of plastic waste generation, or what is the contribution from India with respect to the plastic pollution is what we will see. And in order to curb that, what are the plastic waste management rules of, provisions of this particular rule 2016, whether India ruled out or banned the single-use plastics by the year 2022. All that we will actually discuss over here. Now moving forward, the next one is actually e-waste management. Okay, so e-waste management, that is nothing but the electronic waste management. For that, India had actually come up with the hazardous waste management as well as, disposal rules. We will discuss about these rules also, as well as the e-waste management rules that are actually associated. Then the last one will be this particular global framework on chemicals. So, global framework on chemicals. So, first half of the class we will be dealing with these three important topics. Okay. So, after having said this, so after discussing waste management, we will move to the most important topic, that is, we with waste management we will actually complete environment and ecology portions. Okay, and after that we will be moving on to discuss what the important sections of geography. So I think we will finish those two topics and then I will explain what are the topics that we will be discussing for geography. Or can anyone say, or if you guys want me to say what are the topics that we are discussing, we will be discussing in geography, I can say it now also. It depends upon what you guys want. Okay. Anyway, so I will actually take you through these topics when we are finishing with waste management, so that we will feel even more, what to say, relevant when we are actually starting with geography. Okay. So 1 minute, just a second, please. Okay. Okay. Let us actually start with the lecture. First one is plastic waste management rules. How are plastic waste management rules important? Because India itself stands to be a contributor of around 20% of plastic waste globally. Okay, so this is actually a very, very big number. So plastic management or the plastic waste management becomes very, very important. So that is why we have come up with the plastic waste management amendment rules of 2024, where certain provisions of the previous plastic waste management rules have actually been changed. Okay, so this is what we will be looking at over here. So this seeks to amend the plastic waste management rule of 2016. Okay, so let us get to understand what do you mean by the plastic waste management. This is nothing but whatever is the pollution that is caused because of the plastic. Here you are actually trying to regulate it by expanding the definition of who is the real manufacturer, whom do you mean by producers, who have to be included here, and what is the meaning of extended producer responsibility. Here what is the role of the local self-governing bodies like the panchayats as well as the municipalities. Okay, so and what is the role of the private sector over here in regulating all these things, whether we are actually following the principle of RRR, which is nothing but the reduce, recycle as well as reuse. All that we are looking at this. Okay, so there have been certain key changes that have been made by the plastic waste management rules of 2024. That is, key changes have been made in the plastic waste rules of 2016. So what does 2024 actually, what are the important changes that the 2024 rules actually brought about? It brought about certain changes in the definitions. Okay, so if you see these definitions, I hope this is visible. So first one is biodegradable plastics. Earlier, what happened? The biodegradable plastics as well as the compostable plastics were placed together. Please focus on what I'm saying and then I will actually take you through this particular infographic. Okay. So, what do you mean by biodegradable plastics? From the name, these are degraded naturally or biologically, but they leave behind some kind of residues. These residues are very, very harmful when they are released or when they react with that of the other ecosystems or the environment. Okay, so under this only, what happens, comes another kind of waste that is called as the compostable plastics, or compost. Other kind of plastic is the compostable plastics, where it is totally biodegradable, which does not leave any kind of residues. In the previous rules, both, I mean, the biodegradable and the compostable were actually treated as one, but now what happened, it specifically excluded, that is, the biodegradable plastics no more include the compostable plastics, and these plastics must actually degrade completely without leaving behind any kind of microplastics or harmful residues. How do you call, what do you mean by microplastics? See, the thickness of the plastics are usually measured in microns. Okay, so 1 micron is equal to 0.001 millimeter, not important. Okay, so particular micron of plastics is called as what? Microplastics. We have nanoplastics also. Okay, then they have expanded the definition of importer. Earlier, importer means any kind of a person. For example, I am an importer. If I am importing a completely made plastic product, whether a plastic bag or a plastic cover, then only I was classified as an importer. But under this, what happens? Even when I am importing a raw material or some kind of a pellets or an intermediary material, I am also called as an importer. Next, manufacturer. So again, it broadened the definition of manufacturer. Earlier, whoever produced the end product like the polythene bag or etc. were called as a manufacturer. But now, if you produce any kind of plastic raw material, including the compostable and biodegradable plastics, you are called as a manufacturer. So similarly, the producer's definition also changed. Okay, so if you are a manufacturer of any kind of intermediate materials for the packaging purposes, then you are called as a producer. And for the first time, these amendment rules actually introduced a term called as the seller. So whom does this actually denote? It actually denotes the person who sell the plastic materials, whether it is the plastic resins or whether it is the plastic pellets and so on. Okay, next one we will move to, these are all the definitions that were revised. Next, what are all the regulations for the manufacturers? Okay, so and what are, whether the plastic types are classified based on their thickness or the size or what is what we will see here. So regulations for the manufacturers is that the manufacturers now can sell their products only to the registered producers or the sellers, so they must be registered. Next one, the thickness provisions no longer apply to the bags or items that are made from compostable or biodegradable plastics. Next one, there have to be, so thickness provisions, earlier they had to specify this is this much thick and this is this microns thick, but here it is not required. Okay, next, there has to be mandatory marking and the labeling for, if your plastics are actually compostable and completely biodegradable, then you have to completely put a label. So that was one of the reasons why we actually discussed about the concept of eco-mark rules. Okay, eco-mark labels. Okay, so if your product is environmentally friendly, then you will actually have this particular label. Next one, the manufacturers must report the quantity of this compostable plastics that you are producing to whom? The CPCB, that is the Central Pollution Control Board. Okay, so we are actually done with this. The next one, local bodies and the panchayat responsibilities. Okay, so it says that local bodies actually have to assess and they have to report on what is the amount or the quantity of the plastic waste generation in, what to say, one particular year. And also here panchayats actually have a very, very important role at the district levels, and they must include plastic waste management details in the annual reports. So if you actually recall one of the provisions, so just a slight deviation. So in polity, you know, right, that is, this local self-governance was established by what? The 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act that came up in 1994. So as per the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act, what happened? The 73rd and the 74th, what was actually established? the Panchayati Raj as well as the municipalities were actually established. Okay, over there, you know, there was this Schedule 11. So this Schedule 11 actually introduced what? The 29 items of the functions, okay, or you can say the functional activities that the Panchayati Raj must actually undertake. In that entry 23 and 29, I think it actually talks about sanitation, and one more, this talks about sanitation and health, and then the other actually talks about the equitable or the proper maintenance of the public assets. Okay, where waste management is also a part. Okay, so this is what the Panchayati Raj rules also say. So that is why panchayats at the district levels must include the plastic waste management. This is how you have to interconnect your different GS papers. Okay, next one. The measures to prevent the use of and prohibited single-use plastics were also there within this particular jurisdiction. Okay, so India actually banned single-use plastics in the year 2022. Okay, so with this, let's actually move to what are the other key provisions brought by the amendment is with respect to extend the producer responsibility. So the producer actually brings the plastic goods into the market. After that, what will be his responsibility? It should not just be that he has to see, that is, he has actually sent it to the retail markets and just to gain the profits and move on. It's not like that. He has to be responsible enough in order to see whether the plastic product that he has actually introduced or released into the market is disposed of properly, and if it is in an environmentally sound or a sustainable manner. So this is what he has to take care of. Okay, so extended producer responsibility is nothing but there is a product that actually comes to the retail market. The retailer will actually sell to the customer. The customer after consumption will what? He or she will throw away the plastic bottles or the packaging, whatever that you give in plastic, right? So after throwing up, here only what happens? The producer must be responsible enough in order to regulate the process of disposal. And finally, any other material or the intermediate goods that is there which you can reuse it, then you actually have to reuse it, okay, after recycling. So this is what is the extended producer responsibility. So let us actually see over here. Manufacturer or the importer must actually provide the plastics to, we just skipped a lot, right? So here, manufacturer or the importer of the plastic material must actually fulfill the EPR targets which is actually set. Okay. Next one, it expanded the list of EPR. Okay. So moving forward, you see the EWaste management rules that EWaste products to be included in the management rules. Okay. So it includes the producers, the importers, the brand owners, as well as the processors. Okay. So the entities who are actually involved over here are these, not only the producers, but also your importers, the brand owners, and the processors. Next one, it covers rigid plastic, flexible plastic, multi-layer plastic, as well as plastic, and biodegradable. And also the CPCB, that is the Central Pollution Control Board, actually has to issue what? The guidelines for authorizing the agencies in order to establish an electronic platform in order to trade your EPR certificates. This also works like credits only. That is, if company A has actually produced more of plastic pollution, or it contributed more, okay, in order to offset that, has to buy EPR certificate, right? And you can sell to somebody else. You can sell to somebody who buy it. In case your pollution is actually very less, then what happens? You actually sell to some other company which is producing more in order to offset their pollution. So here you have to bring an online platform in order to make the trade of EPR certificates easier. And finally, you have to set maximum and minimum prices for these EPR certificates based on the obligations that have been fulfilled by the company. Okay, so this is what is the responsibility. See, if you see over here, the retailer sets the this actually starts over here. The consumer buys and uses the product and then leaves away the scrap, like for example the plastic that is used for packaging, etc., the covers, etc. Okay, now the producer is responsible to collect it, to process it, to recycle, as well as to see options to dispose it in a sustainable manner. In that process, if he feels any of the materials can be reused, okay, then he can actually reuse to manufacture products, and then you can actually send it to the market. So this is the cycle of EPR and producer responsibility. Now let's move forward and see the registration. Okay, so online reporting, what you say, the online reporting requirements are there for various stakeholders. So this does not only state the producers, but also includes the importers as well as the okay? And when they actually apply for registration, you actually have to give them the permission. And if for 30 days there is no answer, then it is deemed, or what is deemed to be registered. So this is what it is. 30 days is important. Okay? Now let's actually move forward to the next topic, that is the e-waste management rules. Okay. let us actually see what is the concept of e-waste management rules. So what is e-waste? This is not electronic waste. Okay. So what you have actually, if you dispose of your electronic gadgets, your laptop, your phones, the PCs, or then you have the CPU, mouse, batteries, etc. What happens? That actually leads to a huge, pollution. That is a e-waste pollution. That not only impacts the, ecosystem, but also causes a lot of, water pollution. It causes water pollution. Why? Because those, if they are in the sea, they work with the family, also I think it causes very okay. So as per India has processed around 5.2 lakh tons of e-waste in the year 2022. So the processing has actually reached, or is it, 30.9%, and this has increased 32.9%, and earlier in 2021 it was only 36%. So processing is very so now we understand what you mean by e-waste, or what you mean by electronic waste. It's nothing but broad category of discarded materials. Okay? So discarded electrical materials, okay? And all their components without having any kind of to reuse. You have to totally dispose them because they have lots of metals in them. Okay? For example, there's board, for example, CPU, all these weapons, they actually carry these vacuum lines. Okay? Small cables, and they also burst and can result in accidents. Okay? So this is what it is, and it includes computers, household appliances, and you have audio visual products, okay, your speakers, and also whichever is used in the information communication technology. All these forms the okay, that is the electronic waste. So what are the toxic substances that are present in the okay? So it has a number of toxic substances. What is lead? Okay, so that is found. Lead is actually found in the circuit boards, okay, in all electronic products as well as the assemblies. Then you actually can see the bridges. Then you can find cadmium, which is majorly found in the monitor, okay, CRTs, as well as the printed circuit boards in the computer batteries. Then you have the plating, metal encoders, and other metal parts. Next one is mercury. These are primarily located in the switches, okay, and also flat screen monitors, the relays, etc. And finally, you can see the polychlorinated biphenyls. You actually remember what is this? These are the ones where the PFAS, that is the polyfluoride substance, are and this is one of the pollutant packaging in the Stockholm Declaration of 1994. Very important. India has ratified this in 1996. Okay, so very important. This is actually including, okay, the pollution bodies from every country. Okay, so polychlorinated biphenyls, these are present in what the wrong as well as the polychlorinated biphenyls. Okay, now moving forward, India 40-fold increase is expected by the year 2050. Next one, the primary sources, we saw computer devices are 75% of them, okay, and remaining include your what to say, your telecom sector, the medical equipments from the hospitals, etc., and the scanning centers, as well as the electric devices. So this is the contribution of India with respect to that of e-waste. If you see this e-waste, without being disposed like that, just like that into the environment, we need a buffer, okay, in order to process it, in order to make it environmentally hazardless. Okay, so that is why we need the role of informal as well as the formal sectors, which can actually, that is formal sectors majorly, they can use the advanced technology in order to process it, as well as in order to also recover the important metals which are present there. Okay, let us see. However, in India's e-waste recycling, we can see predominantly the role of the informal sector, very competitive informal sector. You can see these kabadi walas, right? And also you have the unauthorized scrap dealers. Then you have these rack pickers. These are the ones who actually pick up these e-waste. Okay, so informal sector is dominated by rack pickers, and this rely on manual dismantling as well as extraction of the materials, and this can pose both health hazard for themselves, I told you, because of such unforeseen accidents that can happen, and it can also cause environmental risks. And also, if you see for formal sector, here they actually have authorized dismantlers. There are few dismantlers who are authorized, as well as recyclers who are there, but this is just a fraction. They just contribute to processing only a fraction of the total e-waste that is actually produced. Okay, so here you can see the rack picker. Now moving forward, impacts of e-waste sector in India. As I told you, it is actually leading to environmental impacts, that is the land as well as the water pollution, because lead and mercury can actually cause significant pollution. Okay, so lead, that is Pb, lead and mercury. So this can cause water pollution, and also air pollution because of open burning or acid bathing. These processes actually result in the direct release of hazardous substances. Next one, human and health impacts. I told you exposure to these kind of toxins will cause you, specifically the informal recycling workers, they are prone to these kind of health risks. Next one is accidents because of unsafe handling practices. Next one is economic impacts, is that it's going to impact your food security because of water pollution. That is going to affect your crop cultivation and low productivity. So because of this, you're going to be affected by the food security. Okay, and there is also going to be food safety risks, because in the water you consume also there's going to be contamination, and that will cause a lot of retardation in your body. Next one, resource depletion. Okay, so valuable resources, if there is no proper processing methods, we are actually losing a lot of valuable resources like metals. So these are all the impacts of the e-waste sector in India. Now, what is the issue of the e-waste sector in India? This is actually not important for prelims, but then let me just give you a fair idea, because it's informal in India, right? As per the ICEA report, the Cellular and the Electrical Association. So this says that roughly 90% of the collection and 70% of the recycling are managed by the highly unauthorized informal sector. Next one, there is poor technology. That is why we are not able to recover important metals like tantalum, cadmium, zinc and palladium. Okay, so India actually sends all these e-waste abroad, and in order to get that recycled or to recover such important minerals, specifically those that are present in your PCBs. Okay, that is your printed what circuit boards. Next one, insufficient infrastructure. Of course, we do not have enough recycling capacity in India. That is why it is very difficult. Next one, limited private engagement. Okay, so in e-waste recycling, we have very minimal of private engagement over here, and also they are very unfamiliar with cost efficient techniques. Okay, in order to recycle. Next one, majorly unprocessed. Okay, so as per the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, if you see, 67% of the e-waste are being unprocessed. Very limited amount. Even if you see, now we have actually achieved only 32% compared to the previous 26 to 27%. Next, moving forward, dependence on the other nations. I told you, right, PCBs are exported to the smelting refineries of other countries in order to recover precious metals like copper, sulfur, gold, aluminium, etc. Okay. Next one, minimal financial incentives. Definitely there are less of financial incentives, there are less of budgetary allocations. The states as well as the local level people do not actually contribute to this. So what happens, there is minimum financial incentives, and also there is consumer unawareness regarding the e-waste prices. Okay, so this is what are the issues that the e-waste sector in India actually faces. So what are the measures that have been taken by the government? We brought about the extended producer responsibility. That is, whoever is actually producing it, you must be responsible for environmentally disposing it also in a safe manner. Next one, you have to do responsible use. That is, according to the hazard waste management and handling and transboundary rules of 2008, what did they say? That the specific departments or the offices that are actually generating these kind of waste must be responsible. For example, if you make use of a PC, when you are throwing it, you have to be responsible enough to see that it is processed properly and then being disposed of. Next one, the regulation of import and export. Okay, again, according to the hazardous and other waste management as well as transboundary movement rules of 2016, the import as well as the export of hazardous and other wastes is regulated. And moving forward, if we see the transfer of technology, that is the Ministry of Electronics and IT has come up with a very cost efficient technology, okay, with respect to that of lithium ion battery recycling and this has been sent to different other startups as well as the companies to actually use the same, so that it will be a cost efficient manner. And this is part of the life mission that we actually undertook in the COP26 in Glasgow. What is life mission? Life is nothing but lifestyle for environment. So this actually focuses on what? From mindless and wasteful consumption, you have to transcend towards mindful and deliberate utilization. So this is what your your life initiative actually tells. Okay. Next one, the Center of Excellence has actually been set up. Then e-waste action plan is actually being set up, okay, in order to see what is the status of the e-waste that are being generated. Next one, e-waste management rules of 2022. This actually made mandatory for the manufacturers, the producers, and the recycler of the recycler of these e-waste in order to register. So all of you must be compulsorily registered. And also there has been an increase in the number of pieces of the electric and the electronic equipments which are kept over here. Earlier it was only 16, but now it has increased to around 106. Next one, all the tracking, the verification, the regulatory and the reporting processes are going to be done online. Okay. So in order to monitor your transparency as well as accountability. So these are the measures that have been taken by the government. Now we have actually come to the last topic of your waste management. With this we will actually finish most of environment and ecology. Okay. After that we will be starting with geography. So let us actually start with this particular topic, that is global framework on chemicals. So the global framework on chemical fund recently actually has launched its first project. Okay, what does it aim at? In order to it actually aims at the it aims at promoting the safe and sustainable chemical and waste management worldwide. Okay, so let us actually see. This is not that important, but still this has been in news. So this fund actually recently launched the first project. Okay, so let us see what the project is all about. So about the fund, this has been established during the 5th International Conference on Chemical Management that actually took place in 2023 in Bonn, Germany. Very important. Okay, so what is the major purpose? This majorly supports, okay, the countries in order to implement this particular global framework on chemicals in order to manage the chemicals throughout their life, from the place where they are produced to the place and the stage at which they are disposed. The focus areas is it assists different countries, specifically the developing nations, then the least developed countries, the small island developing states, as well as the economies which are transitioning in managing the chemical products as well as the waste. Okay, and all this has to be done with respect to that of global standards. So first one is easy. The next one, it funds the project that prevent or minimize harm from the hazardous chemicals. So these are very simple. Okay, thereby it is actually impacting or focusing on the human health as well as the environment. Okay, so this is what is about the global framework on of chemical funds and how it is actually managed. Here it is managed by an executive board. This comprises of 2 national representatives from each of the UN region. You know UN region, right? UN regions are actually 5 in number. So the first one is your Asia Pacific. First one is African region. Next is your Asia Pacific region. Next is your Latin American region as well as the Caribbean. Next you have the West European region. West European plus other grouping. Then you have the East European region. So here 2 representatives from each UN region. Okay, so this approximately has how many members? 54 to 55 members. Okay, and this actually has 53 member Asia Pacific. Then Latin America 33 members, this is 28 members, and this is 23 members. Again, not very important, but just it's just a passing reference that you need to know what are the UN regions. So donors and the contributing nations are also the ones who are managing or ones who are part of the executive board of this fund. And next, the financial support actually ranges from around 3 lakh to 8 lakh dollars per project with an implementation period of how much? Up to 3 years. So funding is voluntary. Also, we actually dealt with the funding of the WTO, right? Very, very important. So you need to know about WTO. So anyways, in the future classes, after the environment and ecology series is over, we are coming up with another series where I will be discussing about important international organizations, how it is actually significant for India, what is the importance of that particular regional grouping, whether India is a part of it or not, whether it's a founding member, all that we will discuss, okay? So now moving forward, let us actually see. It consists of 28 targets, okay? So you need to know it has 28 targets, and since it actually focuses on the chemical waste and the management, it's all very general. So it definitely focuses on illegal chemical trade and also to strengthen the national legal framework for chemical safety. And finally, it aims at phasing out the highly hazardous substances in agriculture by the year 2035. This is very important, okay? Aims at what to say, phasing out the hazardous chemicals from agriculture by 2035. Is this part of this global framework on chemicals or not? Can be a possible one liner in your examination, okay? So with this, I think we are actually done with the environment and ecology portion. Is it clear from my side? Any other doubts? Any other doubts you people actually have with respect to this particular session? So that now we will be moving on to the most important and the most interesting part, okay? So we finished with environment and ecology. So obviously we thought that we will bring to you some of the important topics that are from geography as well, okay? So we cannot leave geography just like that, isn't it? So we will discuss few important topics of geography. So let us actually take a 1 minute break and quickly jump into the most important topics of geography. Okay. Now, what are the topics that we will actually be dealing with geography today is, let me write it down over here. The beautiful animation stopped, isn't it? Fine. Let's start. So you would actually have a very fair idea of what this is all depicting, right? So this talks about the coronal mass ejections or the solar winds, or will you actually have a faint idea about these of the magnetic field of the earth. You can see clouds over here. So these are the important topics that we will be discussing. So the first topic that we will be discussing will be the discovery of a new mineral in the mantle layer of the earth. So this is actually called as the ring woodite. So ring woodite is the recent mineral that has been found in the mantle layer of the earth. So researchers have actually found this ring woodite. Let us see what is the speciality of this particular mineral, okay? So ring woodite is actually known for trapping water. So in fact, it actually can contain more, or you can say twice the total amount of the surface water that is present on the earth, okay? So we will see how is the formation of this ring woodite and what are the processes that are underlying it, okay? Next, the second topic that we will be discussing will be the differential rotation. Differential rotation of the sun. So here we will see what is the concept of differential rotation and why sun actually exhibits this particular characteristic of differential rotation. That is, the equator is rotating at a different speed when compared to that of the poles. Okay, interesting, isn't it? Is that phenomenon seen in the earth? We will discuss all that here. Then moving on, a very important discussion, or a very important topic, we will be discussing about the concept of geomagnetic storms. So what do you mean by geomagnetic storms? How is it actually caused, and what are the impacts? And does it depend upon the solar cycle, or what is the frequency of this particular geomagnetic storms in a solar cycle? What is a solar cycle? What do you mean by sunspots? All that we will be discussing in this particular article. Moving on, the fourth interesting article is this EEJ. This is nothing but the equatorial electric jets. Okay, so we will be seeing what is this equatorial electric jet, in which layer of the atmosphere does it actually pass through, and here we will discuss about another important term, that is, or important concept of the earth's geomagnetic equator. So what do you mean by the geomagnetic equator? Is it the same, or whether it is fixed with respect to, whether it is fixed like the earth's equator? All that we'll be discussing in this particular article. And then moving forward, we will discuss about another interesting term, that is called as the atmospheric rivers. What do you mean by atmospheric river? Are these moisture laden systems like the rivers that are on the surface of the earth, and how does it actually impact the climatic conditions of the locations where it actually passes over, and whether it has any kind of relation to that of the jet streams? What are jet streams? All that also we will discuss over here. Then another concept we will discuss about, what are the concepts of katabatic as well as anabatic winds. Okay, katabatic and anabatic winds, and what is the influence that these winds actually have on the local weather or the climatic systems. We will see this, and then we will actually discuss about another important concept of pyrocumulonimbus clouds. Pyrocumulonimbus clouds, and finally the initiative that has been brought about by the Ministry of Earth Sciences, that is called as the Prithvi Vigyan. Okay, Prithvi Vigyan, in order to enhance the earth sciences, so that we actually get social, environmental, economical, as well as the scientific benefits. So this is what is the last topic. So we will be discussing all these important topics from geography section. Okay, so here there are certain concepts you need to know. We will be discussing about various layers of the atmosphere, various layers of the the earth, how important it is, how the temperature actually varies, whether in the core it is more, or whether in the outermost surface it is more, and what is the process that it actually underlies everything. For example, you have the convectional currents as well as the magnetic fields. All that we will be discussing over here. Okay, so now let us quickly move forward. Okay, so let's quickly move forward. We've actually seen what we are dealing with, so we are moving forward. Okay, so the very first topic is ring woodite. So in order to know what is ring woodite, you need to first understand the different layers of the earth. Okay, so if you see the earth's crust, so I'm just very fairly giving you an idea. So if you see the layers of the earth, this is actually the topmost layer, which is called as what? The crust. Then you have another layer which is around, so see, this is only to around 70 kilometers. The next 2900 kilometers is your mantle. Okay, it is your mantle, and then you have the remaining, that is your core. It actually extends to around another 1300 kilometers. So this is your core. Okay, so here also there is actually a division, that is, the crust is divided into the outer crust, the upper crust as well as the lower crust. the mantle into the upper mantle and the lower mantle, and then you have the core as the outer core as well as the inner core. Okay, so upper crust, lower crust, upper mantle, lower mantle, then outer core as well as inner core. Then you have a discontinuity. Let me use another color. Okay, so there is a discontinuity which actually divides this particular upper core, upper crust as well as the lower crust. That is actually called as the Conrad discontinuity. Discontinuity. So what do you mean by discontinuity? Here the property of the minerals or the materials actually change with respect to the composition or with respect to the intensity of seismic waves in this particular region or any other kind of property. The composition of the minerals, all that can actually change. Okay, so this is called as the Conrad discontinuity between the upper crust and the lower crust. Then the discontinuity between the lower crust and the upper mantle is actually called as the Moho or the Mohorovic discontinuity. Okay, this is called as Mohorovic discontinuity. Then one between the upper mantle and the lower mantle is called as the Rapiti. What it is? The Rapiti discontinuity. So do you understand? So these are all the the layers of the earth. Okay, and also if you move forward, you will actually understand. Oh, okay, I didn't tell the next one, right? 1 minute. Let me just, okay, then let me show you this picture. Okay. So, if I can actually zoom this for you, the different layers are actually there. So, let me describe this. This is the upper crust and this is the lower crust. What divides or distinguishes both is the Conrad discontinuity. And then you have the lower crust as well as the upper mantle. This is called as a Mohorovic discontinuity. And then you actually have the Rapiti discontinuity between the upper mantle as well as the lower mantle. You have the Rapiti. Then you have the lower mantle as well as the outer core, that is called as the Gutenberg discontinuity, and finally you have the Lehmann discontinuity between the outer core as well as the inner core. Okay, so this is the layer. So why did I actually explain this layer? Very important. The topic is ring woodite, right? Now as we actually discussed that the layer of the earth is like this. Okay, so this is the crust and you have the upper crust as well as the lower crust, and then you have the Conrad discontinuity, then you have the mantle. Okay, this is the entire mantle. So you have the upper mantle and you have the lower mantle. Now this particular crust is actually composed of various minerals. Okay, like you have the silica, then you might have magnesium also. All those different minerals are actually present there. Similarly, if you see this mantle section, what happens? This mantle portion or the mantle layer of the earth is abound in a particular mineral that is called as olivine. It is called as what? Olivine. When this olivine, so remember, in the earth, as you move down, what happens? The temperature actually increases. Okay, and there is extreme pressure as well as temperature as you move down. So what happens when this olivine actually is under immense stress because of extreme temperature and pressure? That results in the formation of what? In the formation of a mineral called as ring woodite. And this ring woodite is recently discovered. Okay, because scientists actually were extracting diamonds. When they were mining diamonds, this particular mineral actually attached to the diamond. When they put it under extreme research, they had discovered that the mineral is named as ring woodite, and it has a capacity to trap water as in not directly in the form of H2O but in the form of OH hydroxide as well as the hydrogen ions. Okay, so it actually consists of water like this. Okay, so for example, 100 grams of this particular mineral can actually hold 1% of water of its total capacity. So this is what was explained. Okay, so we discussed about what? the hidden ocean that has been recently found out by the scientists, where there is actually a mineral that is ringwoodite. We told you, we discussed about the different layers of the earth, such as the crust, the mantle, as well as the core. What are the discontinuities over here, and what is the mineral that is actually found in the mantle? That is the olivine. And this olivine, under extreme temperature and pressure, results in the formation of ringwoodite, which actually, what does it do? It traps water. Okay, do you understand? And sometimes what happens is that it can also be released out in the form of volcanic lava. Okay, it can also form magma here. We will see the process. Okay, so here we actually discussed about different layers. Now let's move forward to see the water cycle. Now, why are we discussing the water cycle? Because we were discussing the what to say about the mineral, right? Water cycle is the usually what happens when there is actually surface of water, whether the ocean, lake, river, there is evaporation because of increase in the surface temperature, right? So when there is evaporation, the light air, which is actually moisture laden, it rises because of because of heat, because of incoming solar radiation. And after that, what does it do? It actually cools by a process of adiabatic cooling, and when there is condensation, there is precipitation which actually falls down as rain, right? So this is what is the water cycle. If you can see, there is evaporation, then there is condensation, and then there is actually transportation. This is what they say. But then finally it actually comes down as precipitation, and when there is precipitation, there is infiltration. When there is there is also percolation, because from the surface flow, and then there is river discharge and everything. So this is what usually is the water cycle, from evaporation till the precipitation as well as infiltration. This is the usual water cycle. But what scientists have found out right now is there is an unknown water cycle that actually takes place inside also. Why? Because right, the earth's crust is composed of different tectonic plates, right? When these tectonic plates actually collide with each other, there is actually a subduction of the plate. When there is subduction, the ocean water also reaches down till the transition zone. Okay, so here the water is actually saved. It travels even till the mantle portion. Okay, so in this transition zone, the water is actually trapped, and that is where we actually find this ringwoodite, and that can also trap it. And sometimes what happens, when the water actually touches the highly temperature or highly hot material of the mantle, what happens? The melting point of that mantle material actually reduces, and that is why it forms what you call it as the magma, and that can actually come out in the form of volcanic eruptions, in the form of lava. So let us actually see here about ringwoodite. Okay, so description about it: it is a rare mineral that exists in the transition zone. I told you, right? So this is your transition zone of the earth. I will show you the picture of it. Okay, transition zone of the earth, which is formed within the deep earth's mantle. Okay, then it forms from the mineral olivine when it is subjected to extremely high pressure as well as temperature, which is exceeding more than 1000 degrees Celsius. Okay, so this is what it is. So you can see here ringwoodite. Can you see how much of moisture it actually holds inside? So this is what it is. Now moving forward, we will see about its composition. The composition is that it is magnesium silicate, that is MgSiO3. It is a high pressure form of magnesium silicate, and this has a special kind of structure. It has a crystalline structure, or it has a honeycomb like structure, which is conducive for trapping of this water. Okay, so this contains what? The spinal structure, and may also contain the iron as well as hydrogen. If you see, it has various phase transitions. Okay, so it undergoes several transitions at depth. You can see olivine can actually become the waxleyite, and you can see ringwoodite can also become perovskite plus magnesiovicite. Okay, so these are all not that important, but just understand what do you mean by this ringwoodite. Okay, so this is what it is. Now moving forward, let us see what is the property. Of course, hydration capacity, because it actually has a unique crystal structure which allows it to absorb water as well as hydrogen effectively. So it acts like a sponge by absorbing the water, not directly but in the form of OH plus H2. Okay. Next, the dehydration melting. So at certain depths you can see that ring woodite also dehydrates. Okay. Dehydrates means what? It releases whatever water it has actually trapped in. So this results in the formation of magma. I already told you, right? This is very, very important in triggering the volcanic activity. So this is what is explained over here. Now, let us actually move forward and see the deep water cycle. Okay. So, when there is subduction of the plate, what I told you, some amount of water moves to this particular transition zone, which is between the upper mantle and the lower mantle. Okay. So, when there is transition zone, what happens? Here there is actually storage or the capture of water, and already there is lot of high temperature as well as pressure over here. So when there is high pressure and temperature, this is actually going to be in a semi molten form, isn't it? So what happens? There will be convection currents or convection that actually takes place. Okay, so convection is over here, and then there is magma formation and it comes out in the form of volcanoes. Okay, so this is what is discussed over here. So here if you see in the transition zone containing water, you can find the ring woodite, which is actually formed by the deep pressure and temperature that the olivine had actually undergone. Okay, so here we actually complete this particular topic of ring woodite. Next, let us discuss the differential rotation of the sun. Okay. So what do you mean by the term rotation? You know, right? The earth also rotates. It takes about 24 hours to rotate. That is why we have the day as well as the night. And earth's revolution causes different kinds of seasons, isn't it? Now, similarly, the sun also undergoes something called as differential rotation. Earth does not have differential rotation. Earth rotates. The sun actually undergoes differential rotation, that is, the equator of the sun rotates at a different speed when compared to that of the poles. So that is why we will see, that is what we will actually discuss in this article. If you see any kind of a solid body, for example, you take this bottle. If it actually rotates, the entire bottle rotates at the same speed, isn't it? Whereas if you take the case of fluids, or if you say liquid, that is water, if I open this and pour it in a glass, and if I actually swirl it with my hands, you will see that the center, which is actually succumbing to more forces, it will spin very fast when compared to that of the poles. Okay, so that is what we will look at this also, because the sun is actually made up of what? It is actually a gaseous star, right? It is a gaseous star. It is composed of gas as well as plasma. So that is why it is experiencing this differential rotation. Let us see. So Indian astronomers, for the first time, they have mapped the variable, or you can say the sun's varying rotational speed. Okay, from where they have actually taken this particular data is from the Kodaikanal Solar Observatory located in Tamil Nadu. So they mapped this by using the 100 years of daily rotation of the sun data. By looking at this, they have actually mapped that the sun undergoes differential rotation. So let us actually move forward and understand further. Differential rotation of the sun actually means that the sun rotates at varying speeds. Okay, so varying rotational speeds of different latitudes, that is, equator rotates at different speeds and the pole actually rotates at different speed. Okay, and they have found out that the equator of the earth, of the sun, actually spins faster and completes one rotation in about 25 days, where the poles actually take 10 days extra, that is about 35 days. And why is this variation? Because as I told you, the sun is a fluid, right? It is a hot fuming mass of gas or gas and plasma. That is why what happened, there are different parts which are actually rotating at different speeds. If you can see here, this is the equator. Okay, so this is actually rotating here, whereas the poles are actually they are rotating at a different speed. So this is only called as a differential rotation of the sun. So here they have found out that the equator is actually rotating at 13.98 degrees per day at what? 80 degrees latitude, okay? And it slows to 10.5 per day. Not important and all, okay? So they have just found that there is differential rotation of the sun. Where what is a possible question that can come from here is that equator rotates fast or the poles rotate fast? That's what you need to know. Equator only rotates fast. The center of this particular fluid only rotates faster, okay? So this is what is your takeaway, and this plays a crucial role in different phenomena that is associated with the sun, that is the solar cycle. Solar cycle is nothing but increased as well as decreased activity of the sun. That is, the increased and the decreased solar activities is called as the solar cycle, which actually causes the sunspots, okay? And because of which also we actually can relate this to the geomagnetic storms. All this is not important, okay? So you just have to know what is the concept of differential rotation of the sun. If you have any doubt, you can actually ask, or we can move forward to the next topic. Fine. We will move to the next topic, that is the geomagnetic storm. So here what is important for us to understand in geomagnetic storm is how this particular storm occurs. Okay. So Earth has recently experienced a severe G4 geomagnetic storm, the most powerful in over 20 years. So we will actually understand what is the concept of geomagnetic storm and why such a geomagnetic storm occurs. Okay. So this is what we will understand. First we have to know the different layers of the sun. So the sun actually has different layers, okay. The innermost is actually called as the core. So this is where all the energy generation actually takes place in the sun. How this energy is generated? Energy generation actually takes place, just a minute. Yeah. Energy generation takes place in the sun by the process of fusion. Okay. Where the hydrogen atoms combine together to give helium, plus there is million joules of energy. Okay, there's lot of energy that is actually released, and this is the energy that is dissipated from the core towards the outside or the outermost surface of the sun. Okay, so you have different other layers over here, and then the outermost layer you actually have the photosphere, and then the outermost layer is called as the corona, and this particular corona is the layer which you actually see during the eclipse also, the halo which is present around the sun. You also have photosphere. I will show you the different layers of the sun. So what happens, this particular layer of corona, please pay attention, this particular layer of corona actually has the what to say, the extremely charged particles as well as ions which are actually present over here. So you might ask me, usually even if you see with respect to that of the earth, only the core is damn hot, right? It is extremely hot when compared to that of the crust. But in the sun's case, it is actually opposite. Only the corona is the hottermost layer, that is the the hottest, not hottermost, the hottest layer of this particular star, that is of the sun. The outermost layer, that is corona, it is the hottest layer. It consists of the charged particles. Okay, so what these charged particles, that is the temperature of these particles are so high that they actually exit or they escape the gravitation of the sun. You know how big is the gravitation of the sun, right? It is actually holding all the other planets around it, but this energy of the particles in the corona or the charged particles is very high that it escapes the gravity of the sun and it moves towards the earth. Do you understand? And when it moves towards the earth, what happens? It actually comes in contact with the earth's magnetic field. Okay, so this is the magnetic field. This is the north and south. The earth is like this. This is the sun, this is the earth. Okay, so it comes in contact with the earth's magnetic field, and then it actually results in the shock waves that are released. And this magnetic field, what happens? These shocks actually gets compressed and then they get released, and this process actually results in the generation of huge amount of energy, and that is called as your geomagnetic storm. And this geomagnetic storm can actually occur, that is depending upon the strength of the storm. This is actually given an index that is called as a planetary index, that is Kp, that ranges from 0 to 9. Okay, so it is called as G5, which is extreme, then G4, G3 and so on. And here Earth has experienced a G4 geomagnetic storm and it has varying level of impacts. Do you understand? So this is what we will discuss. So we discussed about the different layers of the sun, and from the core, due to the fusion, there is huge amount or the million joules of energy that is getting dissipated towards the surface of the sun, that is towards the outermost layer, that is the corona, where the temperature actually is too much, where the ionized or the charged particles actually move towards the earth and affect the the magnetic field, and where they actually get compressed as well as stretched, which results in the release of massive amount of energy, that is called as geomagnetic storm. Okay, any doubts so far? Please tell me. Okay, no, nothing so far. Okay, now let us actually move forward. So see, you actually have the core, then you have the radiation zone, the convection zone, you have the photosphere, the chromosphere as well as corona. This is actually the hottest. Do you understand? So why is corona hottest when compared to the core is generally the question that we have, but we actually do not have the answer. Okay, even the scientists and the researchers do not know the fact, and that is why this is called as the corona heating problem. No one knows it. It's a problem. So corona heating problem. So this is what is the geomagnetic storm. Sorry, this is what is the different layers. Okay. Now let's move towards it. As I told you, let me depict this in yellow color. So the solar wind actually moves towards the earth, isn't it? When it moves towards the earth, it is so strong that there is deflection in the magnetic field of the earth. Okay. And this is actually called as the geomagnetic storm. Can you see this in this diagram? Okay. Now let us move forward and understand the concept, whatever is written. So geomagnetic storms are the disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field. We already discussed how it is actually caused because of the charges from the solar wind, already discussed. The mechanism. So solar wind, as usual, whatever comes from the corona, that consists of the charged particles. What are these charged particles made up of? Electrons as well as protons. Okay, that will interact with the Earth's magnetic field. I already told you this interaction causes a shock wave in the magnetosphere of the earth. So thereby it actually causes deflection in the magnetic lines, and this deflection or the disturbances can cause what? The compressing and the stretching of these lines, thereby triggering a sudden release of energy, and this energy fluctuations causes what you call as geomagnetic storm. Okay, so this is what is the thing that I explained you in one diagram itself. Next, factors affecting the severity. So what affects the geomagnetic storm? We already saw in the first one, right? Even the differential rotation of the sun or the solar activity is one of the reasons which actually can determine the severity of the geomagnetic storm. Okay, so the severity is influenced by the solar wind strength. What is the speed? What is the magnetic field orientation with respect to that of the earth? All that is very important. For example, if a strong solar wind with a magnetic field aligned with the earth can actually, so what to say, the solar wind and if the magnetic field are aligned together, not important, very technical, but then know it. Okay, so when they are aligned, then that actually causes severe or intense geomagnetic storms. Okay, so now let us actually move forward in seeing what are the impacts that the geomagnetic storms actually can cause. The first one is power grid disruptions. Okay, so they actually can affect the satellites with the charges, or you can say because they are charged particles, right? And also the electric current can actually pass through these power grids. So what happens? There will be voltage issues and transformer damage, so that there will actually be power outages in the areas and there will be damage to the electrical systems. Okay, next, The satellite communications are also disrupted, like the GPS, and it affects the navigation system in turn. Next one, the radiation exposure. That is, during the intense geomagnetic storms, when we are exposed to the radiations, there will be severe health risks to the astronauts as well as the airline crews. Okay. Next one, the auroras. Okay. So, generation of the northern, that is the aurora borealis, the northern lights, as well as the southern lights, that is the aurora australis. These can also be, affected to an extent. Next one, the radio communication disruption, because there will be an impairment in the radio communication, especially those which are present at the higher latitudes, and this will in turn affect the critical infrastructure or the critical communication systems. The next one is magnetic field disruptions. Obviously, the entire Earth's magnetic field is getting disrupted, right? So that is why it is going to affect the bird migration and the orientation of the fish as well. Okay, so they are gifted with a power where they actually move in accordance with that of the Earth's magnetic field, but that is also going to be affected. So these are some of the impacts that the geomagnetic storms are going to bring. The next one, you will see classification of geomagnetic storms. Okay, so this has been given by NOAA, that is the National Oceanic as well as Atmospheric Administration. They have classified these particular geomagnetic storms based on the severity by using an index that is called as the planetary index, that is given by the a term that is KP, that is actually the indication of it. So it ranges from 0 to 9, with higher values indicate, that is, if it is higher, it indicates more severe storms. Okay, and it is determined by what? The observations that are made by the magnetic observatories that are located worldwide. Okay, now let us move forward and see what are they. These are very easy only. If it is G5, that means your geomagnetic storm is extreme. Okay, so where your KP, that is planetary index measure, will be is equal to 9. And what is going to be the frequency in one solar cycle? One solar cycle is 11 years. Only that is important. No need to know about the solar maximum, minimum, sunspots. All that is physics. We are not here to do any kind of research. So please, we are here to clear the exam. Okay. So please focus on this. So I'm just telling you, one cycle is equal to 11 years. So when a geomagnetic storm, that is G5, that is extreme, actually occurs, maximum 4 such geomagnetic storms can happen in 11 years. And how long can it stay? 4 days per cycle. Simple. Okay. When you see severe, that is G4, right now Earth has experienced it. This is going to impact again power systems, spacecraft and other systems. Not that important. Here if you see, again the impact is going to be the same. The index is going to be 8. Okay. It can be 9 also, where it occurs 100 per cycle. In 11 years, 100 such instances of geomagnetic storms can come. And per cycle, how many days it can stay? 60. Okay, so this is what it is. Now moving forward, we see G3. This is actually strong. So the effect again, impact on the power systems, the spacecraft as well as other systems. Your KP is going to be 7. So 200 per cycle and 130 days per cycle. Next one is G2. Here it is moderate. Okay. So power systems, again spacecraft and other systems are affected, not important. KP is equal to 6. 600 per cycle. So per cycle, how many days it's going to say? 360 days per cycle. Okay. Do you understand? So now moving forward, again G1 is minor. 1700 per cycle, such instances are there, and 900 days per cycle. Okay, here KP is actually going to be 5. This is minor only. However, even if it is minor, it's going to impact the power systems, the spacecraft operations, other systems and so on. Okay, so this is the topic of geomagnetic storms. Next comes one more important topic, that is what? The equatorial electrojet. So, any doubts so far that you guys actually have? Any doubts in the topics that we've actually discussed so far? Okay, I hope there was no doubts. So, even if you have doubts, you can actually ask me so that we can actually move forward to the next topic. Okay, so what is the next topic? This is your equatorial electrojet. Can you say what do you mean by equatorial electrojet? It's a very technical term, so you will have to pay attention to this particular technical term. Okay, so okay, we will start with this particular topic of equatorial electrojet. Okay, so recently, what has happened is the researchers from the Indian Institute of Geomagnetism, that is IIG, in Mumbai, till now nothing is important, they have developed the Indian Equatorial Electrojet Model, important concept, Indian Equatorial Electrojet Model, to accurately forecast the phenomenon of equatorial electrojet in the Indian sector. So, what do you mean by equatorial electrojet? Is what we need to see. Okay, for this we actually have to understand the different layers of the atmosphere. You can ask me why. Because this equatorial electrojet phenomenon is nothing but the electric current. Okay, so it is the ribbon of electric current that passes through the ionosphere, okay, on the geomagnetic equator, which is about 100 to 150 kilometers from the surface of the earth. So here it might look confusing, but I will actually make it easier for you. Okay, so if you see the surface of the earth, for example, this is the earth. Okay, so we have different layers of the earth. First is called as the troposphere, next one is called as the stratosphere, and next is actually called as your mesosphere, and next one is called as what? Your ionosphere. So now our focus is this ionosphere. So before that, we actually have to see what is the lapse rate or the temperature inversion that actually occurs in this particular layer. So let me use a different color. If you see the troposphere, with increase in the altitude, if you go up the altitude, there will be decrease in the temperature. But in stratosphere, there is temperature inversion, that is, with increase in the altitude, there will be increase in the temperature, and that is the that is actually opposite in your mesosphere, that is, with increase in the altitude, there is going to be decrease in the temperature. However, in ionosphere, with increase in the altitude, there is going to be increase in the temperature. Okay, do you understand? So when there is increase in the temperature, what happens is that the ions are actually formed. Do you understand? This is where the gases actually gets ionized and forms ions. That is why the electrically charged particles are already here. That is why you have the formation of the auroras here in the ionosphere. The aurora borealis, that is the northern lights, as well as the aurora australis, that is your southern lights. Okay, so this is where it is. Okay, now we will actually move forward. Here, what is it saying? That the Indian equatorial electrojet, yeah, I told you it is the electric current which actually passes through this ionosphere on the geomagnetic equator. Okay, so till this you actually understood. In this ionosphere, you are having a ribbon of equatorial electrojet that is actually passing. Now, parallelly, let us understand what is the concept of geomagnetic equator. Okay, so this is the earth, this is the earth, and the earth is always considered a magnet. Why? Because that the inside of the earth, that is the core, it is actually it is characterized by extreme pressure as well as temperature, and then you have the mantle where you have the magma formation, etc. Because of that, there are convection currents. Okay, and these convection currents actually result in the formation of what? The magnetic fields. Okay, so these magnetic fields or the magnetic lines of forces, they are like this. They are oriented like this with respect to that of the earth. Okay, these are the magnetic lines of forces. So when they had actually measured the strength of the magnetic field, this was concentrated or it was high in this particular region. So this was actually considered as what? The north, and this is actually considered as what? The south. Do you understand? So this is the Earth's axis, the north as well as the south, as well as this is the equator, that is the 0° latitude. Okay, whereas you see the, let me use another color. This is the geomagnetic axis. Okay, so if you see, the geomagnetic equator is perpendicular to this particular geomagnetic axis. Okay, so this is always why the Earth was actually considered a magnet also. This is one of the reasons. Do you understand? So now let us actually move on to understand. Now you know that this is the geomagnetic equator. Geomagnetic equator. We will actually see here the layers of the atmosphere. These are the different layers of the atmosphere. The troposphere, and it has tropopause, the stratosphere. Then you actually have the ozone layer. We are always discussed, because this actually observes the ultraviolet radiation. Then we have the mesosphere. Then you have the ionosphere with charged particles. Okay, so this is around 350 kilometers from that of the surface of the Earth. Do you understand? So what happens is that, so let me show you this also. This is the surface of the Earth. This is the northern magnetic pole. I told you this is how it is oriented, and this is the southern magnetic pole, and here perpendicular to that is your magnetic equator, whereas this is your geographic equator. This is the geographic north as well as the south pole. So what is this phenomenon and how does that happen is that this actually happens during the daytime. Okay, when the incoming solar radiation actually comes over here from the sun. When incoming solar radiation from the sun actually hits the ionosphere, already the temperature is high in the ionosphere, right? So with the incoming radiation, what happens? The temperature further increases. Okay, so what happens is that there is actually increased ionization or increased charged particles. So this charged particles actually move in the form of what? The charged particles movement is there. Okay, so what did I actually say? This charged particles move in the form of something called as what? The ionospheric winds. Okay, so that actually results in the formation of your equatorial electrojet. So let me actually show you in the next explanation. So it is, what do you mean by equatorial electrojet is that it is a narrow ribbon of this electric current. This flows in the Earth's ionosphere. I showed you, right? So this is the Earth's ionosphere. There is incoming solar radiation. Already the temperature in the ionosphere is very high, and this further triggers the movement of the charged particles. So there is movement of the charged particles, which is called as what? Ionospheric winds. These are different from that of the normal winds. Okay, normal winds may there are actually normal particles only, whereas in ionospheric winds you actually have the charged particles. Do you understand? And these winds are actually called as the solar quiet. So let us see that further. When that solar quiet comes in contact with that of this particular geomagnetic equator, then what happens? It actually reacts with the magnetic field over there, and then it actually results in this particular equatorial electrojet. Okay, so it is a unique phenomenon and it has critical implications for navigation, communication as well as other systems. And in India, it is closely monitored near the southern tip, particularly at Tirunelveli, because it is actually found near the tropics, India. Okay, next key features is that it occurs at the geomagnetic equator. I told you what is the geomagnetic equator, how it is oriented with respect to the Earth's equator, where the Earth's magnetic field lines run parallel to the surface. We saw this. It has a current density of approximately 100 kiloamperes, not that important, and it flows eastward. That is, this electrojet actually flows eastwards during the daytime, and during night the direction reverses, and also creates a distinctive magnetic signature, okay, detectable at the ground based and satellite magnetometers. Not that important, just understand the concept, okay. So, what is the effects of EEJ? Let us actually see. It enhances the geomagnetic field by tens and thousands or hundreds of nanoteslas. Okay, so this is actually having an impact on the geomagnetic field, and also it actually brings disruptions and it impacts the power disrupt, because any kind of disruption in the magnetic field is going to bring what to say, the impact on the critical infrastructure. Okay, so that is what it is saying over here. Now let us see the formation. I told you, right, the solar heating. So ionosphere, solar heating. Solar heating generates the temperature gradients in the ionosphere. So this actually further heats up and increases the temperature for the charged winds to flow. So there are ionospheric winds, and there is actually an eastward electric field that is actually generated here, and this electric field is called as the solar quiet. When this electric field actually acts with the magnetic field at the geomagnetic equator, then what happens is that we have this high density current called as the EEJ, that is actually over there. So this is what is mentioned over here, okay. So see here, eastward movement of the EEJ, and this is actually your electric current system, SQ current system, okay, electric field or the electric current system, okay. Now let's move forward, and you know what is the geomagnetic equator. We already discussed this sufficiently, okay. So you can see the Earth's north-south. Yeah, you can see the north and the south. This is the geographic north pole. This is the geographic south pole. And then you have the geographic equator over here. And this is your 0-degree magnitude equator, okay. So yeah. The next one is atmospheric rivers, and the next topic will be after atmospheric rivers. We will have one or two more topics to be done with geography. So we will actually stop today's class with this EEJ, and on Monday we will actually begin with the particular topic on atmospheric rivers. And after atmospheric rivers, we will have the concept of katabatic as well as the anabatic wind systems also. And after discussing that, we have topics on the triple dip La Nina, as well as we have the nor'westers, and then we have the meridional overturning circulations also. Then all that we will actually discuss in the next class on Monday. So over here we've actually discussed about solar activity only, the solar flares and how that's going to affect the magnetic field. Because of that, what is going to be the impact and so on. And we also discussed what is the difference between the geomagnetic equator as well as the Earth's equator. So with this, we will actually wrap up today's live session. I'll actually meet all of you in the 9th session, where we will be discussing about 2-3 more articles from geography and few of the key terms that have been in use for the past 1.5 years. Okay, so thank you so much. We'll meet all of you again in the next live session on Monday.